I just launched my very own original show. It's the first show I've ever produced, and the very first one we did sold out. I'm talking standing room only, packed in there. The body heat was so intense the AC stopped working. It was actually kind of miserable. That's how sold out it was. I don't say this to brag. I say it because it's true. And the reason that we were able to sell this thing out and make it a success isn't because I'm some like genius producer or I'm the man. It's because I surrounded myself with the right people. I asked a ton of questions. I did a lot of research. I had a ton of help, and I got lucky. Luck always plays a factor in there too. So I wanted today to cover and give the breakdown that I wish I had when I was launching a show, to like the real inside baseball, the nitty gritty of what to do, what not to do, what's worked from someone who's done it and what hasn't. And then especially because mine's an original concept, how do you even come up with the concept like this? And then where can you take it in the future? Today I'm going to give the breakdown that I wish I had when I was trying to launch this show. I started from nothing. I just was like, man, I want an original show of my own. I want it to be live and comedic in some way. Where do I go from there? So today I'm going to break down how I came up with the concept, how I crystallized that concept into an actual show format, how I found a venue, how I set up the logistics, how I did the marketing, how I actually prepped for the show and put all the right people in place, how I executed the show, what went well, what went poorly, what I learned, what I'm going to do differently next time, and what the future of the show is. Because, yes, at the beginning I did say, hey, we sold it out, woohoo. That is great. But a lot of things I did weren't the best and should have been done a lot better. And there's a lot of areas I have to improve on if I want this show to succeed long term. Because I'll admit, my dream is for this show to become like my big thing. I believe in the concept, and I think the first one proved that the concept has enough to build on. It's got some rough edges. It's got some kinks we got to work out, but I think there's something there. So today I'm going to tell you all about it. Hopefully this is insightful or interesting in some way. Otherwise, it might just be me talking like real inside baseball, nitty-gritty details of stuff that nobody cares about. But hopefully the few that do care about it find this episode really fascinating. So with no further ado, my name's Cody TroutPod. Welcome to Comedic Confessions.
I'm Cody TroutPod, and this is my podcast, the Cody TroutPod.
Yes, you heard right at the beginning of the episode. This used to be called the Cody TroutPod, and I really like my theme song and the video, so I'll probably keep that for a while. But I am changing it. It is now Comedic Confessions. That's what the live show was called, and for a long time I have been searching for a concept, a theme, something to build the show around, rather than like, it's just another podcast with a guy talking. Like, what is the central core of this show? Like I love, whether it's interview style shows like Hot Ones or kind of themed shows like Updating, or even interview like Chicken Shop Date, things like that, or Royal Court with Brittany Broski. I was like, ooh, those are just like cool. It's not just like, hey, let's do an interview. It's like, hey, let's do an interview, and these are the themes and formats. And it's like, all right, I'm a stand-up comic. I want to incorporate comedy and performance in there. I think a lot of my skill set is also kind of in the moment, off the cuff, riffing, crowd work. I'm pretty good at those things. I want to incorporate that in there. And so I ended up building this show concept, and my hope was like, man, if this goes well, this could be what the show becomes. Like, we could have live versions of it, and we could have one-on-one versions of it, and it's centered around literally comedic confessions. So that's what the show's going to be from now on. Sometimes it's going to be one-on-one. Sometimes it'll be solo. Sometimes it'll be interviews. Sometimes it'll be small group. But the guests will bring a confession and confess it, and we'll comedically riff on it. So that's what the show's going to become. Now on to the live show, because that's what the episode is all about. The show has to start with an idea. So I wanted a themed show. I wanted my own live show. How did I come up with an idea? Well, I had elements, it's like I want there to be an organic element, I want there to be a randomness element, I want there to be a crowd interaction element, but I want it to be comedy focused as well. Highlight myself, highlight other comedians I could have as guests. So what I did is I just asked all my friends that were comedy fans but did not participate in stand-up comedy, because comedy and comedians are pretty popular right now. Like Theo Vaughn, he's just a stand-up comic, but now he's got like one of the biggest podcasts in the world. The guy's platform's huge. Joe Rogan, that he does so much, he's barely like a stand-up comic, purely anymore. I mean, he is a comedian, but he does so much stuff. Anyway, all that to say, comedy and comedians are big, but how are people that are fans of these people consuming this comedic entertainment? When I asked, I found that the old model wasn't really happening. People really aren't watching specials that much anymore. As a comedian, it's very gratifying to produce one. I've never released a special, but I know how awesome it would be, and I know from friends and associates who have how big of a deal it is. But that's not really, people don't really care as much as they used to. That used to be like a big thing that could break you. Now it's just like a vanity thing you can do. Also, people aren't really going to pure stand-up comedy shows unless they're like a big fan of comedy and they're just like a stand-up comedy nerd, or they're in a really like saturated big-time comedy market like New York City, Chicago, LA, or they already know the headliner. So I was like, okay, like the traditional stand-up route doesn't exist like it used to. You can still grind the clubs and do that for a long time and try to make it that way. But so I asked my friends, okay, if that's not how you're consuming this comedic content, how are you consuming it? 3 answers popped up that were far and away the biggest 3, and this was the seed that germinated into my show. The top 3 answers were podcasts. Ding, ding, ding. We're already on one. That was first. Second, crowd work clips and other social clips of comedians performing. Third, the show Kill Tony. Kill Tony is the #1 live podcast in the world. If you haven't heard of it, you can check it out. But if you have, you probably have heard of it. It's huge. And so what I did is I created literally like a Venn diagram, like you do in like 6th grade science, and just wrote down elements of all of these shows that I thought were really fun. And I found out, okay, elements of all these things, that I thought, where could I find the overlap? What like elements that I think are really valuable and important and interesting, and then where could I bring in my own flavor? So from Kill Tony, I thought the idea of the comedian panel and the randomness of drawing names out of a bucket, I thought that was really fun. Like anybody who signs up or submits has a chance to be on the show. You never know what's going to happen. I liked that a lot. I also liked that there was comedians on the panel that got a chance to showcase their comedic chops, riffing and bantering from crowd work clips or the vertical social clips. I love how easily digestible they are, how widely disseminated they can be, and I love that you don't need a lot of context. I think in an hour-long show, there are probably really funny moments that maybe don't need a lot of context, but can be like, look how much fun we're having. And so I thought, okay, I want something that can generate those moments as well. Spontaneity, intrigue, hilarity, and then podcasts. I think a lot of the fun of the podcast is the script is removed. It's kind of just a private room. Yeah, there's cameras and mics set up, so it's not like a true representation, but it's the closest representation you can get to 2 people just having a conversation. We're humans. We're social creatures. We like to converse, and I think that's really fun. And it's really fun to see the funniest people in the world have a conversation because they're just great at being funny, but it doesn't feel scripted or forced. It's just like, damn, this is like, when you're hanging out with your funniest friend and they're really on a roll, well, these people that are the funniest people in the world, they know how to just summon that every week. I wanted to bring an element of that as well. So putting all that together, I came up with a few ideas, and I don't want this episode to be 9 hours long. So basically, I was like, okay, I want a random draw element. I want a comedian panel. I want conversation and introspection, a little bit of vulnerability with hilarity, and I want a crowd work interactive element. This specifically, like crowd work clips are very popular. I'm not a huge fan of like pure crowd work, but I get the appeal. So instead of trying to work against the audience, like that's what's popular. Ooh, I don't like that. That makes me mad. Meh. Or that's what's popular. I hate it. I'll just do it anyways. I was like, okay, that's what's popular. Why is it popular? What can I learn from it? And how can I use that to my advantage to make something for myself that could benefit me and my friends that I put on it, and can also give the audience something they want? Because that's the goal, is to entertain people. They're signaling by liking this stuff on social media that they find it entertaining. So I think the spontaneity of a crowd interaction where, oh, somebody from the crowd is interesting and we just had this really interesting moment. It's like when somebody tells you a crazy story, that's fun. But when one of the funniest people in the world is the one listening to the crazy story and having all these riffs, it creates really fun moments. And so I wanted that element of it too. So ideated for a long time, came up with the idea of the show, what's now called Comedic Confessions. The name sounds obvious. Took me longer than I'd like to admit to come up with the name. So the show concept is I am the host and kind of like the MC and lead interviewer. I have a panel of comedians, and the audience can submit anonymous confessions before the show. They just put the juiciest bit, the headline of their story, anonymously on a card. I shuffle the cards, and during the show, I draw a card. If I draw your card, you get to come on stage and tell your story and interact and banter with the panel of comedians, myself, and the audience. So I thought that this core concept kind of captured the three elements I wanted to capture, which was the podcast. We're having just an interesting conversation with a stranger, which is already interesting because it has been kicked off by the thing that they find most intriguing about themselves. They're not going to, if they want to participate, they're not going to submit a story of like, I brushed my cat on Tuesday. No, we wanted a juicy story, and you don't have to participate, but if you want to submit and participate, you're going to put a juicy story. So boom, already a meaty subject. Boom, it's already with somebody who wants to participate, so they're going to be more forthcoming and have more fun with us. And I'm a big believer in like leaning into like the embarrassing side of it. Like I think telling embarrassing stories is really fun. Like especially like a confession implies like, oh, there's something a little like embarrassing about it. I think telling embarrassing stories, this is going to sound cringe, is actually really good for a number of reasons. One, once you tell the story and others laugh at the story, you realize like, oh, we've all been through, like maybe this specific scenario is just my story. We've all been through that same story in a loose, more vague sense. So it connects you to others. Like, we've all been there. Also, it takes the power away from the story. Like these embarrassing moments, especially speaking for myself purely, when you keep them locked up inside, they fester and they can really like cause anxiety and it can restrict you. But if you just exercise those demons and get it out into the world, you'd be amazed how much more free you feel. Like if something has power over you and it's like a secret, secrets can be damaging. You got to just be like, hey, listen, this is my shit. This is what I'm dealing with. This is what I did that's embarrassing. This is what I'm going through. And even if nobody cares, it's good to just get it off your chest. And you're like, oh, life goes on. I can put one foot in front of the other. So that there is a little bit of like a soulful and maybe even cringy aspect to it. But I want to provide that for my guests on the show in a hilarious way. So that's the podcast element. Crowd work element is people from the crowd. We're telling crazy stories. We're riffing back and forth. There's a potential for so many good clips and riffs. I think that's great marketing for the show, and it shows how much fun we're having in the room. And the show's different every week. So if you see a clip, it's like, oh, if I go see this show, I'm going to see something different every time. So we can build an audience with consistency. Like my stand-up, if you've seen my act, you probably don't want to see it again until I've got new stuff. And especially since I'm not, a superstar, great comedian yet, it takes me a long time to come up with good new stuff. The third element, the random bucket pull of Kill Tony, I did my own version of that with the card shuffling. We don't know whose story is going to go next. It's not like they submit and I vet them before the show and I talk to them like, hey, is this good? Is this bad? No. They submit them. We shuffle the cards, and I have the audience or the guest draw a random card and read it off, and that's who's coming up. And so that's the concept of it. And I really crystallize. So yeah, that's sorry if I'm jumping all over the place. I just have a lot of thoughts that I wanted to get out. Honestly, I want listeners to find this interesting, and I enjoy listening to things that go into like the nitty gritty and the logistics of how something came to be. So I hope listeners do as well. But also, this is for me just to crystallize all my own thoughts. So this works as a podcast and a video and audio journal. So that was the core concept. Man, this podcast is going to be 9 hours. I got to move faster. Okay, how did I crystallize this concept? Well, I hit up a lot of show producers locally and non-locally. Non-locally, I would just text or call with them. But locally, I would say, hey, I'll buy you a drink, buy you some lunch. Can we meet up? And let me run some ideas by you, and you poke holes in it. Did this with a number of show producers a number of times and got really valuable feedback from them on what they thought could work about the idea, what they thought couldn't work about the idea. And they poked a number of holes in it that I didn't see. Like one element in particular, there's a show producer, it's a couple, Lauren and Jeremy. They're called the Martin Dupross. They said, hey, it might be tough to get people to submit embarrassing stories to people they don't, and like come on stage and tell them to people they don't know, especially if they're just going to get made fun of by comedians. And I was like, well, I really like that aspect of the show. So like the idea that people will come up and it can be fun with the comedians. Like, how do we make people more comfortable? And they said, what if the comedians had to participate? And that was a real light bulb moment of like, oh, what I should do is I should have the comedians. And this is what I did, and it worked really well. I told the comedians, hey, you got to get to the show a half hour early, and you got to mingle with the audience members around the story submission station. So around the place where people can sign up and submit stories before the show, the comedians that you'll be, quote unquote, confessing to, that will be bantering with you, you establish a little bit of rapport with them, so you feel more comfortable. So boom, that we've gotten past that initial first interaction awkwardness. The second element, I open the show with a little bit of stand-up. Myself and the other comedians do some stand-up to introduce ourselves, get the crowd warmed up. But before we do audience confessions, I have the comedians submit confessions to a separate pile, and we draw a comedian confession first. So they have to sit in the hot seat first. And the audience sees like, oh, okay, this, not only are they willing to participate, but they also get to see the format. Like, oh, this is what to expect. This is how much the guest talks versus how much the panel talks. And so that was a really valuable insight that really paid dividends in the show. I think it made the show a lot better. So that was how I crystallized the concept. That's a small tidbit. So that's how I got the idea. That's how I crystallized the concept. Once I had the crystal concept down, I'm like, okay, I have this show that's like part stand-up, part interview, part panel, part podcast, part confessional bonding experience. You know, where do I go from here? So then I needed a venue. And this is part of the luck. One of my close friends actually works with a local venue and had asked me before if I wanted to do a show there. And so he was one of my first calls. And he said, dude, we would love to have you do a show here. Let's meet and talk about it. And so had a preliminary conversation with him, but I said, well, I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't understand what getting a venue entails and like, what other venues could offer. Because not only in terms of money, but physical space, dates and times available, amenities, logistical concerns, all that. So I reached out to a number of local venues, and I asked them, hey, I'm a local comedian. I want to produce a show. What does that process for submitting a show look like? A hurdle I ran into was, well, it's not really a stand-up show. It's kind of like this new live podcast confessional thing. That was a hurdle. But with a few venues, I got past that stage to where we could actually talk, kind of set up and deal. And so then I kind of started to learn the landscape of like, okay, this is monetarily what venues will offer and logistically what they'll provide and support they'll provide. And it ended up that my friend's venue that he wanted me to host a show at, which in my head, because he's my close friend, if it was a toss-up between his venue and someone else, I was going to go with him 100% of the time. I just wanted to see, hey, what does the landscape of venues look like, and producing shows, and just taking these meetings will help me learn anyways. So a lot of times, especially for an unproven producer like myself, I don't want to reveal. A lot of these venues gave me numbers and confidence, especially the venue that I ended up working with, Ultraviolet. I won't say any of the numbers, just in case I didn't run it by them, just in case, but basically the elements are like ticket sales, drink sales, and then like some venues want you to pay to rent their space. That's like for an unproven producer. Now, if I was super successful, I might be able to even get a budget for my show from these places and keep ticket sale, whatever. But that was kind of the elements I was working with. So that's how I secured a venue, and then me and my friend locked down and the rest of the venue ownership and management team. We locked down a deal, then locked down a date. And then I was like, okay, logistically, let's see the setup. And it was at a place called Ultraviolet, which is like an EDM nightclub. And I was going to turn it into like a comedy venue. So a lot of shit was going to have to happen very quickly. So logistically, we would need a stage, an area for the panel, an area for the hot seat, an area for for the confessor, an area that I'll need to be in, as the host, seating for the audience. And then the biggest concern was they have these massive windows, and they open at 10 p.m. They're like a nightclub with EDM music. So the sun's already down. It's just like a cool view of the city. My show is going to happen at 7. So, and it's the middle of summer. So the sun is going to be beaming in and just roasting everybody. Something about comedy shows, been doing comedy shows for years now, and something about the sun being out, it is harder for the audience to laugh. And then the sun was going to also be directly in their eyes. Something about a dark room frees people up to laugh at something more, and kind of creates like a feeling of like, oh, I'm not being judged. I'm not in the spotlight being judged for what I'm laughing at. So my dad and I, my dad was a MVP prepping for this show. He helped with everything, and I didn't even have to pay him. He was like volunteer. I had to pay everybody else. I didn't even have to pay him. He was volunteering. He was the MVP. We had to get this black tarp stuff and use ladders like in precarious positions and a bunch of tape and just crazy acrobatics to get behind the speakers, behind the walls, over the other instruments, and tape over these giant windows like 15 feet in the air to block out the light. It was really hard, really sketchy, but that was like one of the main logistical concerns was, how are we going to block the light out? So that's one of the things, like if you produce a show, there's just a lot of like little shit behind the scenes that you're like, oh shoot, I didn't even realize this was a thing. But yeah, that was brutal. That was one of the hardest things of it, was getting the right materials, getting all the ladders, getting up in there. That was hard. If my dad wasn't such an expert on ladders, he's a window cleaner, been up and down ladders for the last 40 years. That I don't know if that would have been possible on my own. So that was huge shout out to my father for helping out with that. That was one of the logistical concerns. The others, I just had to really map out the entire show. Like, okay, when the people come in, this is where they're going to get their ticket checked. This is how we're going to keep track of who signs up. We're also trying to collect an email list. So let's do a raffle. I did a raffle to collect contact information. Here's where the story submissions are going to happen. Here's a sign explaining everything. Then they go into the showroom. Here's where the bar is going to be. Here's how I'm going to set up the chairs. Here's where we're going to have the stage and all that. Just had to figure out all that and had to get all that shit to the venue and coordinated. That was just, dude, I have so much respect for people who produce shows all the time. It's just so much fucking work. And I'm not trying to brag on myself. I'm trying to say, hey, shout out to all you people doing it for real out there. So we have all these logistical challenges, but the biggest logistical challenges were like, how can this show be produced and broadcast? Because that was the other element of it is, especially I'm going to get crowd work clips or show clips from it, I need this to be captured and recorded in a really high quality way. And I don't want there to be a bunch of dead air, so I would like to have some type of music, or I settled on a DJ. I needed a DJ for the show because I wanted some walk-up music. I wanted some sound effects. If there was a lull, I wanted to be able to be like, hey, do this, do that. And so I had to hire an audio engineer, a photographer, a videographer, and a DJ. And we'll get to it in a minute, but that's the budget. That's why this show, despite selling out, lost me a fuck ton of money, which isn't that funny, but I didn't set out for the first one to make money or even the 10th one to make money. I need to make this show great. And if the show becomes great, there will be an audience and I can figure out how to do it profitably so I can keep doing it. Right now, we just need to make the show great. So I had an audio engineer. His name's Kaiser. He was the man. He worked hard. We were at the venue weeks beforehand. We were figuring out the audio interface, the mixer. Basically, we had to route. And I think for experienced like audio people, this might sound easy. For me, it was a monumental task. We needed 6 microphones, the DJ board, an audience mic, and I think one other audio source routed through a mixer, recorded on individual audio tracks so we could tune and balance those, and then save to a hard drive as individual tracks while they were being broadcast through the PA system. So Kaiser helped me set all this up. That was a chore. We had to get a different hard drive, update the mixer. I mean, there was, oh my gosh, that was scary. That was a nightmare. Did not know if we were going to be able to pull that off. But the other element of it was video. I needed like multiple really nice video angles because I want to produce this as like a high-end show. And then I needed photos for marketing purposes. So I got a photographer, photographer, same guy, David Steele. Local producer Nick Campbell put me in touch with him. Those guys are awesome. Nick Campbell also answered a ton of my questions on ticketing, logistics, marketing. Huge shout out to him. So, and then the DJ, his name's Name Brand, Brandon Lucas, Name Brand Beats on Instagram, I think. He rocked as well, man. He was just great. Like, the DJ board wasn't super hard to set up. He had his own thing. But, he added a lot to the show, kept it moving when there was lulls and stuff with music, sound effects, all that. But the logistical challenges of the video and the audio were really tough. And so getting all that coordinated, getting the setup, I had to bring my own studio lights because they had like strobe lights for like EDM music, but not like spotlights for a stage. So I had to set up my own lights. I had to rent chairs from like a party event rental space, and my dad helped me load them up in his van and carry them across town. There was just lots of logistical elements that, thankfully, talking to other producers, I had learned like, oh man, you got to really map this shit out. And it was a new concept. I'm like, fuck, I really don't want this show to be a train wreck. So I got to think of every single element. So what I did was so the doors open at 7, and that's when story submissions started. The show started right at 8. So people had time to mingle, submit a story, grab a seat, grab a drink, and then the show wrapped up by 9:30. So I mapped out minute by minute from 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. the exact flow of the show. What I was doing minute by minute, what the technical side of things, audio, video, DJ were doing minute by minute, what the audience would be doing minute by minute, how things would flow, like when I would bring someone up on stage and then go to collect the story submissions. Where would I do that? Where would I bring those? How would we draw those on stage? Doing that, I mean, it took hours and days to like really think through all that. And I was like, oh, fuck, I didn't think of this. But it saved my ass when the show came because I was ready for exactly how the show went down. Like, I'm bringing people on stage. There's the DJ's doing music cues. The photographer and videographer's here. I'm here going to get the story submissions, sneaking back in beside the audience to get back on stage. Now I have the stuff for the giveaways and the prizes. So I just had all this shit that I would have been totally lost doing. But because I took the time to sit down and think it out minute by minute beforehand, that really helps. So if you're running your own show, especially if it's like a new original concept, I cannot recommend that enough. That really saved my ass. So that's the logistics. I have a little list written down here of stuff to go over. Man, I hope I'm not boring anybody to tears. I don't know how deep to go in any of this stuff where it's like, just me reflecting and super boring, or it's like interesting. So if anybody's still listening, maybe you can let me know. The next part would be marketing. So we have our show concept. We've crystallized it. We've mapped it out. We've set up the venue, or at least have done our best to. Now, how the hell do we get people here? You know, we're over $1,000 in the hole on this damn show. How do we get people here so we don't lose our entire savings account? I worked with the venue. I asked other producers, who do you use to market your shows? What are your tactics? And got a ton of great advice from Nick Campbell, from the Martin Dupross, from David Bates, other local producers, just like how they do this stuff and sell tickets. And the venue works with a team called AP Promo. They're local to OKC, and they had a lot of success marketing events at that venue before. And I said, hey, let's work together. What's your skill set and recommendation? They put me in touch with a graphic designer, and I had just all these sketches on notebook paper of like, hey, this is what I want the flyer to look like. Literally, I have multiple sheets of notebook paper that I would just send this graphic designer and be like, okay. And then I would have notes written in different colors of ink on them, like, hey, this is what I'm thinking the front of the flyer looks like, and the bottom and the layout. And she was able to take those notes and create something real. It was wildly impressive. Her name's Jenna Wynn. She was awesome. I hope I didn't piss her off too much with how like needy I was, because I was just like, hey, like, let's try this, you know. I hope I wasn't a disaster client, because I will be hitting her up again for the next one for more flyer designs and graphic designs. Also, I did because I wanted some custom marketing materials. So I got a local photographer who I have a lot of respect for. Her name is Rachel Waters, and she's like a really artistic photographer and has a great eye for this kind of stuff. So I rented a studio, got her out, and we did like a promo photo shoot. So I had promo photos to use on the flyer, promo photos to use to launch the event as well and market it on social media. I think that would be classified as optional. You definitely don't have to do that. But I believe like my face on the flyer would matter a lot, tying my stand-up, the podcast, and the live show all together under one kind of like branding element. So and the photos came out amazing. Rachel crushed it. So we came up with the idea that like Comedic Confessions, we want to market it as like this like fun, zany, like funky new thing. So we kind of came up with a little bit of a psychedelic look for it, and like a fun, soft, like psychedelic font, and kind of like serious has gone wacky. So the promo pictures, I was like in a suit with a turtleneck and a chain, but I was being silly. I don't know if I'm going too deep into the weeds on the graphic design here, but that was the element we used to market. And then I made flyers. I made normal like 8.5 by 11 single-sided flyers, but I also got a tip from some other local producers. They said like handing out flyers right before their show to like bark people in the door is what like barking, getting people in the door. They said they had some success with that. And I said, well, why don't I just make smaller versions of my flyers and do that even in advance? So I also made these little 4x6 index card sized double-sided flyers that had the same information as my big flyer, just on two sides. And I would carry those around, and every open mic I went to, if I went out to dinner with my girlfriend, if I was out in the city, or if I was in a business, I would just like hand those out. So that kind of gets to the marketing strategy. We kind of had a few main pillars. One was going to be organic social, which is me just like posting this shit and bugging people about it. Another was going to be flyers posted around the city. That's the single-sided 8.5 by 11s. A third was going to be the 4x6 in-person handout flyers. A fourth was going to be a big giveaway that the AP promo team was going to help with. And then other options were like if we needed to run paid ads, or if I needed to literally just text my friends and beg them to come. Those were kind of our last resorts. So we'll start with the flyers, because I was already talking about those. And then we'll do the giveaway and then end on the organic social. So the flyers, I just literally had my stack of flyers, and I walked into random businesses, or not random, local businesses, and I just said, hey, I'm a local comic. I'm producing a show nearby. Do you mind if I hang a flyer in your window? And I would say 80% of them said yes. Most of them didn't give a shit, but if they seemed kind of like into the idea of the show, I would linger and I would talk to them a little bit and be like, yeah, it's an interactive comedy show. And if they thought it sounded fun, I would be like, dude, you should come to the show. And I had my backpack. I would get my backpack and get one of these little small flyers out. Be like, hey, here, you should come to the show. You know, it's in a couple weeks or whenever, however far in advance I was at that particular business. I was like, you should check. We'd love to have you there. What's your name? You know, if you're on social media, hit me up on there. We'll make sure you get in the door. And then if they seemed like into the idea, I'd be like, hey, do you mind, since I'm here and I have these little flyers, do you mind if I hand some out to your customers? Do you mind if I hand some out outside? They weren't as crazy about that, but some places said yes. And I would just go in public, high foot traffic areas and people walking around. I'd be like, hey, brief interruption. If you guys are looking for something fun to do the night of Friday, June 20th, come to the show. Here's a little flyer. Hit me up on social media with any questions. It's a totally new interactive comedy show. We'd love to see you there. It's going to be a really fun thing for the city. And, you know, that people, I think in the era where everything's advertised on social media, some of those in-person interactions actually went a long way. And I'll kind of touch on the effectiveness of the marketing at the end of the marketing spiel. The third big prong was the giveaway. So I had never like run a social media giveaway, but the AP promo team, they're connected with a bunch of like popular local spots, whether it's like restaurants, bars, movie theaters, etc. And they were able to put together like a giveaway where these businesses would donate, whether it's like a gift card or a promo package, bundle them all together and make this big post about that said, hey, do you want to win like the best night out ever in OKC? You know, like this post, share it, tag a friend, and you could be entered to win this stuff. And part of the giveaway winnings was 2 tickets to my show. So like my marketing was kind of wrapped up in this big giveaway, and it created some more traffic for my show. And the giveaway performed well. A lot of people saw it and, you know, participated in the giveaway. And then I think some people that even didn't win the giveaway probably came to the show. So I think that was a good one. And then organic social was the one I probably leaned into most heavily, because I would say, especially on like Instagram and Facebook, which is the primary short form like video platforms that are more localized, my audience on there is fairly local or like within driving distance of this show. And so obviously I made a big show announcement and was like, well, this means so much to me, woohoo. But then I was like, man, I gotta like pump this like stuff, like promo out, but I can't just be like, please come to the show, you know? So I was like, okay, what's the core element of it? Is confessions. And so I thought, okay, what if I do like little mini bite-sized confessions, and that like ties into the show, and like the pieces of content, I hate the word content, but that's, I don't know what else to call it. The pieces of content can stand on their own as entertaining, then it plugs my show. So a popular format that's like super easy and kind of hacky is like street interviews. So I did some street interviews with local comics where I told them that if they gave me like a fun confession, I might use it to promo the show. Got a few really funny, good ones. So I just cut them up into like these real snappy clips. The best one was my friend Caleb, who was one of the comics that was on the show. He told a really funny story about how when he broke up with this girl, she texted him something like, hey, even though we're not together, like, I'm really glad I let you hit. You deserved it. It was just really funny. It was a real text that this woman sent him. And he told this like 3-minute story. I cut it up into like a 25-second clip. And then I plugged my show at the end, and that ended up getting like 10,000 views organically, and, you know, a lot of engagement, which for me is a lot. So it's like people were knowing about the show. And then I also filmed like some just wacky promos with wacky visuals by myself at the venue, would post those a lot. And so of the marketing strategies we used, we did not do paid ads, and I didn't do like the text my friends and beg them to come. Mainly because I didn't want to like fire all my bullets this time. It's like, man, if I ever do this again and I need to beg people to come, I don't want to have already asked for the favor. I would say the most effective strategies, I think organic social worked pretty good. I think the giveaway raised awareness pretty good. And I think the handing out of the small flyers worked pretty well. I think the flyers posted in windows, I don't really know how well that worked. I don't really know how much people look at that. But like raising awareness by handing people a flyer, that did work pretty good. I recognized some faces at the show that I had given flyers to. Another thing I did, I spent so much fucking time doing this. I researched every Facebook group that was like OKC events, OKC nightlife, Oklahoma this, fun stuff to do, OKC that, and then every event page and calendar I could find and submitted my event to there. It took so much fucking time. There's like dozens of these. I don't know if a single person even saw these. So it's like if I had to rank the marketing efforts, I would put the giveaway, the small flyer handouts, and the organic social as kind of like those are my pillars I'll build around for next time. And then the flyers in the windows, paid ads, the event page submissions, and Facebook groups as probably like, takes a lot of time. Don't know if it's worth it. So that's the marketing. Next would be the budget. Well, before I do the budget, so ticket sales, I didn't realize this. They're not linear. There's like a little burst at the beginning of people who are like, excited for you and want to support, and they'll buy a ticket. And then there's kind of a lull for a while. I was like, damn. I think like 10 days before the event, we had like 8 or 11 something like tickets sold. And I was like, fuck, this is a disaster. And then I just kept pushing it, and I tried to get more creative with my marketing. Then less than a week before the event, ticket sales start to pick up again. Then like the 3 days before the event, they really pick up. Then the day before the event, we had like 40 tickets sold. And then the day of the event, by the afternoon, we had like 60 tickets sold. And then it's like, then I'm like, oh my gosh, we're like almost sold out. Holy shit. And then by the time the show started, we had to sell all of our last chance door standing room only tickets. We sold 95 tickets. We were turning people away. Like, it really happened all at once. And I don't know where all these people came from. I don't know. Maybe some of the venue owners like texted their friends like, hey, you got to show up. But it was like a crazy turnout. Did not expect that room was probably fire marshaled to hold 40, and we had 95 people in there. So it was hot as shit. Everybody's packed in there. And I think we had a fairly good time. It was a fun show. But that brings me to the budget. So we sold all these tickets, and I lost money. What? How did that happen? Well, I spent a lot of money. So my idea was, listen, if I'm going to try to build the show, my dream is for Comedic Confessions Live to be, this sounds grandiose, to be like my career. I think I can build this show into something great. There's a lot of live podcasts that are already doing, like Kill Tony, Updating, Advice Fight. Those are like, just off the top of my head, these are like live comedic podcasts that are super successful. And obviously that's like the upper echelon. All I got to do is like be decent enough to draw a crowd when I market my tickets. And that can be something to build on. So what did I spend all this money on? Well, if I wanted to do it bare bones, I could have just got like, basic mic and speakers, recorded it on my iPhone, uploaded that, and, just marketed it with some organic social, sold some tickets, and probably made a couple $100 of profit. But I'm trying to build this thing into like a high production value show. So I spent money on the promo photo shoot, the promo studio rental space, the flyers. I got, instead of just like printing those out on regular paper, I got them professionally printed on like nice paper. And for the smaller flyers, like the cardstock gloss for the 4x6s, I will say that made a huge difference. At probably 25% of the people that I handed it to, when I handed it to them, they went, "Ooh, this is fancy." They said something to that effect every time. It was really interesting. And they're like, "Oh, this is like some professional shit." So that it just like every little thing matters, which is unfortunate, but fortunate if you go that extra mile. And luckily, I had been, well, not luckily, I guess just, because I'd been planning for the show for months. Like I had the idea in January, started really working on it in March, and overdrive April, May, June. And so I had been setting aside money, and I was like, man, I might have to spend like $1,500 on this show. And I was right. Fuck. So spent a lot of money on the posters, the promo photo shoot, the flyers, the black tarp stuff that we had to use to cover those windows was pretty expensive. What else? Oh, I had to like really clean and redo a lot of the venue. So spent a lot of money on like cleaning supplies and just like various attachments for cameras and stuff, like extension cords, power strips, all that. Let's see. Spent a lot of money renting the chairs. I mean, not a ton. Each chair was only a couple bucks, but we rented 60 of them, so it was quite a bit. Let's see what else, and then plus you have to they have like an insurance package, a damage protection package, and a let me see your package. That joke sucked. And then spent a lot of money on the audio engineer, the photographer, the videographer, the DJ, the marketing and AP promo, marketing and promotion team, paid them as well. And then also we had to get like a specialized hard drive that worked with the audio mixer. I should have printed off I had this all in an Excel spreadsheet. I'm not just like guessing of how much money I made or lost. Like I know exactly how much money I lost because I had all this in an Excel spreadsheet, and I was like, wow, no amount of tickets is going to make this okay. And it's true. I sold out. Yeah, I sold 95 tickets to this one. If I sell 50 to the next one, that will be a huge success. So I have to get way more efficient running this show. But I wanted to do it big for the first one so I could see what costs really helped the show and what costs didn't. And, unfortunately, I think all of them did help in some way. But I'll have to figure out how to run it cheaper next time. That much is certain. So that's the budget side of things. Also, ticket pricing, I think I'm going to do different next time. So this is like really inside baseball, so this might be boring. But how I did it this time was I had VIP tickets, I had general admission tickets, and I had balcony tickets. VIP tickets were comfier chairs, they were the front row seats, and they had little tables you could put your drinks on. General admission was what it sounds like, just little folding chairs, all just kind of sat together in rows. Balcony was the farthest away. It's up in this little balcony they have on the dance floor, but you got to sit on couches and have little tables for your drinks up there. So you were farther away, but you were comfier. And I had these each in different tiers, and then I had like different tickets you could buy at the door. And it was just, I don't think it created the proper urgency, and I think it added unnecessary complexity. So next time what I'm going to do is... And I had VIP for $20, general admission for $10, and balcony for $10. That's how I had it set up. And then $15 for tickets at the door. I think next time what I'm going to do, because the pre-sale number's big. Like, myself and the venue were concerned when we didn't have much tickets sold, 10 days before the event. So pre-sales signify that the event has real legs, and it causes you less stress. You're like, okay, is my marketing working? Because I didn't know, hey, do I need to push this really hard, or are people just waiting till the last minute to buy tickets? Because I had a bunch of people telling me, so pumped for your show, I'm looking forward to it, I'm planning on it. And I'm like, yeah, you haven't bought a fucking ticket. I can see who's bought a ticket. And then they all ended up showing up. So it's just tough. So I think what I'm going to do next time is it's all general admission. And tickets will be $10 up until a certain date. So say that the show was on like the 30th day of the month. I'll open ticket sales a month before the event and say, hey, if you buy them before the 15th, they're $10. And like really hammer that, like $10. And if you've come to the show before, use this promo code and it'll waive your ticketing fee as well. So they'll be cheaper. And then once that hits the 15th, okay, now tickets are $15. And so it incentivizes you to buy early. And then $15 up until, and then day of the event at the door, they're $20, which is probably too much. I think 10 to 15 is probably the right amount for my show, but we just had way too many people buying at the door, and it caused chaos. It was a lot of stress because we're like, damn, have we sold any fucking tickets? So the idea is just, hey, buy the ticket before you get there, and you'll save money, and it'll make our planning easier. So that's how I think I'm going to do it next time. And then if the tickets are slightly more expensive, like if they're $15, that allows me to do promo codes and discount and ticket packages where I can price them at $10. But if I price them at $10, by the time I do a promo code and a discount and I've cut the ticket price to $5, I'm now losing money every time I sell a ticket. I can't do that. Unfortunately, this show eventually it needs to be profitable, but as of right now, it needs to just like not siphon my bank account dry. So unfortunately, I can't just give all this shit away for free and make it awesome. So that's the ticketing. Now the show itself, man, I was just like really stressed. There were so many moving parts. The setup, the ticketing, the story submission, the comics, the this, the that. Also, I do want to shout out the comics. Had a few of my closest friends on the first show. I just needed people I really trusted and people I thought could really have an interesting group dynamic. So one of my closest friends, his name's Hamza. He lives in New York City. He's an excellent comedian, excellent on podcasts, excellent on panels, and just like one of my closest friends. So when I found out he was actually going to be in town during the show, I said, dude, you have to do it. So got him on the show. He crushed it. He was awesome. Also, another one of my closest friends, Caleb McCurry, who him and I could not be more different in lifestyle, communication style, sense of humor, but it's kind of like that opposites attract thing. We get along really well. He's just so funny. And I thought he would be a perfect juxtaposition to my energy on the panel. And then I thought, okay, who else should I add? And I was like, I want somebody who's great at stand-up, who's great on a panel, who could tell great stories. And the person who immediately came to my mind was someone named Lynn Kay. She's now an OKC comic. She's one of those people that's just like funny 24/7. She just sometimes happens to be on stage, you know? And so I got her to do it, and oh my gosh, she crushed it. She told the craziest story. She had the funniest panel riffs and banter. So it ended up, the panel was like super, I want to say diverse, but that implies like a racial or gender thing. I mean diverse in senses of humor and styles. Because everybody had like a different style of question they would ask, a different type of riff they would go with, a different style of banter. So that worked really well. The show itself, because it was the first time we'd done anything, there was just like, it's so fresh. And we're still processing the video and audio files and, you know, making sure it's all right and putting it all together. So I haven't got to watch the show all the way back through uncut yet, but there was some lulls. There was some kind of like rough moments where I was like trying to figure out the logistics of it. Because how I had it set up now is I went up first, introduced the show, talked to the crowd. I did like 3 to 4 minutes of crowd work just to kind of get the audience comfortable with the back and forth. Then I had the panelists come up and each do a stand-up set. And then after the panelists did their stand-up set, I would bring them back on, have the panelists do their, you know, comedic confession. Then it's the audience's turn. I think the broad strokes of that actually are pretty good. I thought pretty hard about all that before the show, and it ended up that worked okay. I think I should probably do material up top. The reason I didn't want to do material is it's like I don't want to make the show all about me and do all my own material every time and make it like a vanity project. But it does put the first comic in a tough spot because it's like, wow, we just started this kind of wacky, different show. The host just did crowd work. Now I got to do material and get the crowd. I had Hamza go first, and he did really good. He really crushed, but he's just a great comedian. So I think I made his job tougher. So I think I should probably do material next time, and then also have the comics do material. And then I think having the comedians confess first just once also works pretty good. I was going to have maybe them all go, but the fun part of the show is when the audience gets to participate. So I think the maybe rougher moments where there was some lull came from just never having done it before, and I wasn't as tight and crisp on my timing and had to like think through the logistics of what was going on. But once we got into the stories, then the inexperience showed a little bit at myself as the host and the panelists just never having done anything like this before. It took us a bit to find our footing. Like, you know, you read the anonymous story and it's like, ooh, catchy headline. All right, come up here. Okay, introduce yourself and go, I guess. So when we did it for Lynn's story got drawn as the comedian. And, you know, so she's comfortable on stage. She got right into it. It was a really crazy story, too. It's like, the full episode. Oh, yeah, that's the other thing is Comedic Confessions. It will come out on this channel as a live podcast, the whole thing, and then I'll make clips of it. So you'll get to see all this that I'm talking about. Hopefully that's interesting as well. So she had a crazy story. You know, we kind of interacted and bantered with her a little bit. And I was going to do this thing where I timed everybody's story, like, hey, you only get 5 minutes and then you're done. But the fucking timer wasn't working as well as it was like really annoying, and it would beep really loud. And I was like, I'd rather just, you know, we're going to ditch that. So I threw the clock off stage. I was like, DJ, you time it. Tell us when time's up. And so that was a little clunky. I need to figure out a way to like, how can we make it where one story doesn't take 45 minutes and derail the whole show and put everybody to sleep, but also, we're not too beholden to some arbitrary restriction that makes the show feel clunky. But then we got the audience involved, and the audience members, they're there to watch the show. Even if they submit it, they're not like expert comedians. So we need to do our part in keeping the story on track, making it engaging. So I think like when we pull the story, like I would have us like riff on it at first. Like, ooh, what do we think this is? Ooh, why is this juicy? Oh, what's interesting about it? I think that needs to be tightened up a little bit. I need to set clearer expectations beforehand with the comedians and with the audience of like, hey, when we pull a story, we're going to riff on it for like 30 seconds. We're all going to take a guess, like, what's the juiciest part? What's the most interesting part? What do we want to know? Then, hey, reveal yourself. Then it's like a dramatic moment. All right, come up to the stage and then introduce yourself. And then, okay, here's the headline again of your story, the juicy part. Now give us the context, and then I need to also evaluate what percentage of the time should the person in the hot seat be talking. I think sometimes I over-talked a little bit. I'll have to watch the full footage back. I think sometimes in the effort of like trying to keep a story interesting or on track, I might have taken the focus off of the most interesting element, which would be the person in the hot seat. But at the same time, they're not practiced on stage. I don't want them to just like have to try to learn how to tell a story on stage right out of the gate. So, here's what I think I'm going to do in the future better. Because for this one, I just had people like, hey, introduce yourself. All right, tell your story. And then we would kind of like jump in with interruptions and try to riff and banter. And then also I realized I didn't know how to like end it. I would find a lull and be like, okay, thanks for coming. But I think I need like a way to wrap it up, like each little interview or story person. So I think that I should take the most interesting element of their story and give them a story jumping off point. So like one of the stories was about like getting shot at by a homeless guy. And I think instead of just being like, all right, who are you? Tell your story. I'd be like, all right, so you got shot at by a homeless guy. Set the stage. Why the hell did he shoot at you? And it's like, obviously that's what they're going to tell the story about. But if I start that, they have to answer that question first, and it gets us right into the meat of the story without all this extra context. And the person who told that story actually did a great job. So that's just the confession I remembered. And I'll tell a story about that story in a second, but I'm trying to get through this part. So, and then at the end, I think, because I also want it to be a little bit like vulnerable and like reflective, I think I should wrap up all the craziness by being like, okay, what did you learn? And then they can give like their final sentence of like, I learned that, it all works out in the end if you keep your heart open. Like, aw. Or I learned that never trust no bitch. Like they can say something wild to end it. It's like, hey, all right, thanks for coming on the show. So I think that having a little button to end each story would help a lot, because sometimes it got a little rambly at the end once we'd squeeze the juice out. And especially if there's no time limit. That's why I wanted the time limit. So it's like, all right, it's over. That's it. So I need to think on that more, and maybe involve the audience even more. Like maybe towards the end of the story, like, hey, who has a question? Like, are there any details we're leaving out? Maybe that might be too hard. But I think that like having a period where the audience can chime in and be like, what were you wearing? Or something like that would be interesting. And then at the end of the show, I do think the end of the show I had planned out pretty good. So a couple interesting things happened at the end of the show. I'm a big believer in leave the audience wanting more. So after we pulled what I thought was going to be our final story, I was like, all right, like that's our show, folks. Thank you so much. And I was going to do like the big wrap up. And then a couple guys, one of the DJs from the venue and one of the owners was like, do one more story. And I was like, ooh, because when you're in it, you just like don't know how it's going. Like I kind of thought in my head, I was like, I hope this is going well. This could be going really bad. The audience could be so bored. luckily, some of the indicators were in our favor. Nobody was getting up and leaving. The people that were in standing room only were still standing there. They hadn't walked away, or the audience was attentive. Nobody was like talking or chit-chatting. Those are usually signs that the show's going bad. But I was like, man, this could be going really bad. I just don't know. And they're like, one more. I was like, one more? I was like, we're trying to wrap up, man. I was like, okay, audience, we'll let you decide. Who's ready to go home? And there was like silent. And then I was like, all right, who wants one more story? And the audience cheered really loud. And that really surprised me because I didn't know how it was going. So either they were just being like really nice and supportive, which is possible, or the format was interesting. And I do think, like I said earlier, it was a little like nobody was really quite sure how to do it with, okay, this person's telling their story. When can I jump in with a question? When can I jump in with a riff? How much should I say? The second half of the show, of the confession part, I think we hit our stride. Like the last few, the audience members that were confessing, they had seen it happen a few times, so they were more comfortable. I was more comfortable and knew which questions to ask. We were all more free-flowing back and forth. Like, so I do think it started to pick up steam and get more snappy, more lively, and more fun as the night went on. So when we had that last story, it was like, man, that was a real high note, and then people were like, one more. I'm a big believer in leaving wanting more, but I'm also understanding like, well, I just asked the audience, they cheered, we're going to do one more. And I said, okay, we will do one last story. I'm not going to keep going, one more. Like, no, this is it. So I was like, we will pull one more story. And the story we pulled was, I got shot at by a homeless guy. And it's like, ooh, that's juicy. All right, come on up here. The story was submitted by my dad. So it looked almost fake how crazy it was. Like, we were going to end the show. We decided to do one more story, and it's my dad's story. And when he starts walking up, I was like, no way. And the crowd recognized him because he's been helping out with the show. He was the one scanning tickets at the door. Well, he was the one that was supposed to be scanning tickets. He's a social guy, so he was just talking to everybody. My girlfriend actually took over the ticket scanning. Otherwise, we would have checked 0 tickets, which is not a slight against my dad. My dad's the man. He makes everybody around him feel special and comfortable, and he is the man. Without him, the show would not have happened. That is just a funny anecdote. But everybody knew it was him. And he was like, well, this is awkward because this, he pointed at me, he's like, this is my son. So he told a great story. We had a great rap final. It was a really fun moment. It was like crazy. I couldn't believe my dad's story. People thought it was fake. They're like, that was planned, right? The encore story, and then it's your dad. I'm like, no, it really wasn't. So that was pretty hilarious. Then it's like, okay, we're doing all this story. Then is it just like, all right, show's over? I wanted there to be like a reason for the show to continue to the end. And then when it's over, like I want there to be a big finish. So I came up with the idea of somebody wins story of the night. So the idea was, when I was approaching all these local businesses, I'll go back and touch on that. I also asked them, would they want to collaborate on a giveaway or donate something to support the show, and I'll like shout out their business as well. And a lot of them said no. A few of them said yes. We got some little gift cards here and there. Then Dust Bowl, which is located right under Fassler Hall in Midtown, right across the street from the venue. They're like, oh, we'd love to support. They gave like a game of bowling plus dinner for 6 people. It's like a $300 value. They were like, we think your show sounds awesome. We would love to donate this to your show as part of your giveaway. So I was like, wow, that's an amazing prize. So I was like, I want winner of story of the night. They're going to win this. So at the beginning of the show, I was like, winner of story of the night wins this big prize. So it not only is like, it's not like we're just doing like, oh, this is just a bunch of people talking, and then at the end we go home. It's like, this is a bunch of people telling stories, and pay attention because the audience picks their favorite and they win a prize. Woohoo. So I had the comedians pick the 2 finalists, which worked pretty good because if you just have the audience cheer for like 9 different stories, it's kind of like, okay, do we have a decibel meter? But I was like, all right, I'll have the comedians pick 2 finalists from the stories, and then the audience will pick their. And this is where my like scripting out the show minute by minute of like what's going to happen helped. I was like, okay, comedians, you go through the story submissions we pulled because I had set them to the side, and you select 2 finalists. While you're doing that, I'm going to do the other giveaway. At the beginning of the show, I've learned from different producers, like your email and contact list of your ticket purchasers is like your biggest asset. I said I had a little booth out right when they checked in for tickets right next to story submission. It said, hey, if you put your name and contact info, you're entered into a raffle for the show. So I drew the winners from there, and they won the other gift cards of nearby businesses and bars and restaurants. So some people were happy, woohoo. I got contact info to let them know about future shows. People won some prizes. By the time I finished that, the comedians had the final 2 stories ready, and I just had the audience cheer for which one they wanted. They cheered really loud for both, but so it was cool. They were really excited. And then the one that won had her come on stage, accept her gift card. Right before I did, this was the other thing. I was like, I need to like thank the venue and stuff. But I know from like hosting at comedy clubs, when the show's over and you're just like saying thank you and the lights are turning on, nobody's really paying attention. So I was like, before we announce the winner, I want to say my thank you. So I thanked, the audio engineer, the DJ, the videographer, the photographer, the AP promo team, the venue, and I hope I didn't leave anybody out. Honestly, the MVPs behind the scenes were my dad and my girlfriend. I mean, they helped so much with the like setup of the show, pep talks when I was feeling stressed. They listened to me talk about this show for fucking months. It was all I talked about, all I thought about, all I worked on in my free time, And so they were huge. So I want to give them a shout out right now too. Thank you to Dad and Paige. But then I announced the winner. She came on stage, got her prize. I was like, that's Comedic Confessions, folks. Have a great night. So it was a big bang to end the show. I think that was a good element. So that was the show. And that's the show. That's me reflecting on it a little bit. I think a lot of the, okay, I want to wrap up here. So, I'm talked so much, but I meant for this to be a short episode. That was the show. What worked, what didn't? Okay, what didn't work? I think maybe let's start with what did work. I think the core concept, I really was like apprehensive. I was like, man, I hope this works. I think the core concept was a lot of fun. Maybe I'm being too optimistic. I think a lot of people really enjoyed it. I think a lot of people were really into it. And it's like the core concept is worth building on. So that's a huge, huge win. What didn't work? I think it was honestly just inexperience running the show. There were some clunky moments, some rough edges, some kinks we got to work out. Just in like flow with a show of like keep it moving, get the audience into it, get the stories going. I think the first few stories, not only is it harder to get the audience to open up the first time something happens, but never having run the show before, I probably wasn't the best host. So I think watching the video back and having a plan for when I pull the story, what do we say? When they come on stage, what do I say? How do I introduce them? How do I keep the interview on track? How much do I riff and banter? How much do I let them talk? Do I have a set plan, or is it like if they're super chatty, let them go? If they're timid, pull the details out of them. How do I make them feel comfortable and also the audience have fun and make the story interesting? And then how do I wrap it up? Like, how can I find a moment where it's like, ooh, we've hit our crescendo, we've got the full details, we got our juicy, funny moments out of this story. Now let's wrap it up. What did you learn from this? What would you do different next time? I think what did you learn? It gives them a chance to say something like reflective or something hilarious, and then boom, it's over. So I'm going to lean into that, I think. I think ironing out the beginning of the show too, like making it more clear. Hey, we're doing stand up, and then the comedian confesses, and then the audience goes. Just tightening up the whole flow of the show. And I think improving the production value of the stage as well, because it was just like, some studio lights shining on a table with a $5 tablecloth and a black tarp. I need a sign that says the name of the show, so it's in all the clips. I think that's a huge thing I need as well. But yeah, I think the core of the show works, and I need to just improve the flow of the logistics of in between stories. I need to improve the flow of like when people are telling stories, how to balance keeping it engaging. How much should I talk? How much should the panel talk? How much should the guests talk? And, figure out if, how much stand-up should we do at the beginning? How long should each story be? Should we do a ton of stories, or should each story take a little longer? Should we have like little elements in the middle where people can submit anonymous stories that don't want to come on stage and we just rapid fire pull a few of those, and it's like, ooh, naughty audience, woohoo. Or should it all be people that come on stage? I need to find out new ideas to experiment with too. So got a lot of work to do. And but I do think the core concept has potential. So to wrap up this, what's next? Well, I hope this was interesting to listen to. I hope it was informative or insightful, or if you're trying to run your own thing or have your own project, you see all the details that go into it. I hope it doesn't sound bragging in any way when I'm talking about like, oh, we sold this many tickets and I did all this shit. No, that's just facts of what happened and some of the work I put in to get there. There's a lot of people that produce more shows than me, better shows than me. I was lucky to learn from them and be surrounded by a good team. What's next for the show? Well, I have big dreams for Comedic Confessions, hence why I've changed my entire podcast to Comedic Confessions. I think that core concept could change the way that my show works in interview format, in group hang format, and in the live format. I think all those can tie together. My plan is to publish this first episode, make a bunch of great, hilarious clips from it to get some buzz going, schedule the next one, and market the shit out of it and see how well the ticket sales do for that one. And then continue that process, improve, tweak, do it again, and see if I do it like 5 or 6 times and we have a consistent audience, the social clips are doing good, people are having fun, then my plan is to take it on the road. I did a show at the Tulsa Looney Bin not too long ago where I was a panelist on kind of a variety show called Adult Bingo. And the host and creator of that show, he told me, he's like, yeah, I'm not even like huge on social media. I think he had like 15,000 followers, which is a lot more than I have. But some of these big communities have like millions and these shows have millions. He's like, yeah, I have 15,000 followers. He's like, but because I have a fun concept that comedy clubs feel that they can market easier than maybe just like, hey, here's another comedy show with a headliner or here's another showcase. He's like, I sent clips of my show, description of my show, and marketing materials to every comedy club in the country. He said, I heard back from like 50 of them. He said, and he booked all of them. And he said that he was able to quit his full-time job to just run this show. Now, running the show is really hard, but it being my full-time job would be sick. So that gave me a little insight into what I could do next. So if I do this 5 or 6 times and it's working, then 2 things. I'm going to try to get it set up on just a monthly schedule in Oklahoma City. And it can be like a monthly thing that people can get excited about. And at that point, it'll have to be profitable. I'll have to figure out what to do to make it profitable. And I'm not just going to like raise ticket prices through the roof. That I want to either get more efficient in how I do it, or maybe I'll have to cut back on some of the things I'm spending money on, but I have to make it profitable. The second thing is I'm going to send it to venues, like pretty much anywhere within 500 miles that holds 50 to 100 people that I think could be a good showroom. I will reach out to them and see if I can strike a deal where we bring the show there. And if it can be profitable, travel costs obviously will have to be accounted for in that. But if I can take it on the road and make it profitable here, then long term it could grow into like a central pillar of my comedic career. And that's the goal. That's what I want for the future of the show. That's what this is all trying to build towards. So I hope this was interesting or insightful to hear what all goes into like producing a show like this, coming up with a concept. If you're working on your own project, I hope this gave you some insight into maybe some areas you hadn't considered, or made you feel a little bit better about if you're feeling stressed out about what you're working on and you're like, man, there's so many moving parts, I'm so inexperienced. Like, dude, I felt that way constantly during this whole process, and the show happened and it was fun and it did pretty well. So you don't have to have it all figured out. I struggle with standing on the sidelines and overanalyzing. Sometimes the best thing to do is say like, hey, here's where I want to get to. Here's where I'm at now. Keep putting one foot in front of the other. Do your best at each stage, and don't let the fear of the unknown stop you from entering that unknown. Because I think the only way you can learn by studying, but there's certain things you can only learn by doing. So just get in the ring, do your thing, and have fun. I don't know. That was supposed to be inspiring. It wasn't at all. This show was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work too. I hope we get to do it a lot more, and I really, really hope this is the beginning of something special. But even if it's not, I produced a show, and it sold out, and we had a good time doing it. And I'm content with that. We'll see you next week on Comedic Confessions with Cody TroutPod.
The Cody Trout Pod.